Have you ever played the victim in your life? Blaming someone else, the economy, the current situation in the world today for your lack of success, happiness, and fulfillment? I think if we were honest with ourselves, we might be able to, it wouldn't be too much of a stretch, I would say, to say that we've sat on that pity pot more times than we care to remember. Now, it's okay. We're humans and we're going to go there from time to time. But what's not okay is spending your life there. And so today, my guest shares with us how being an elite canine dog trainer led him to owning his shit. And in doing so, faced life head on with amazing success. Now, before we get into all that, we know that being a man today has never been more challenging. And so the pain that we feel for many of us is real. It's a pain of loneliness and a pain of unworthiness. And it's masked by our anger and our resentment. And it's all because we're uncertain and afraid to take that next step. So if you're tired and fed up with where your life is at, then I'm going to encourage you to start your hero's quest, where you can become more, live more, and accomplish more than ever before. Go to members.theawakenedman.net and start your quest today. Now, let's get on with today's episode.
The average man today is sleepwalking through life, many never reaching their true potential, let alone ever crossing the finish line to living a purposeful life. Yet the hunger still exists, albeit buried amidst his cluttered mind, misguided beliefs, and values that no longer serve him. It's time to align yourself for greatness. It's time to become a revolutionary man. Stay strong, my brother.
Welcome, everyone, to the Revolutionary Man podcast. I'm the founder of the Awakened Man movement and your host, Alan DeMonso. When was the last time that you didn't own something that you knew was yours to own? And what about the time when you did? How did both of those instances shape the perspective about who you are and the type of man that you are? Listen, all of us are going to have moments in our lives when we do something that later we regret. And how we handle that says a lot about our character and what we're made of. And the same holds true when we don't do something. The point is taking ownership of our lives. And I mean, all of it takes guts. And so today we're going to hear from a man who not only has the guts to own his life, but also has the fortitude to live fully and completely. So allow me to introduce my guest. With almost 2 decades of elite canine training, focusing on obedience, aggression, and control, behavioral modification, and protection training, turning potentially killer dogs into loyal family members, Stephen Avant stepped away from the dog world and found his passion in mind and lifestyle coaching, striving to be the best person that he can be. Now, by implementing his deep understanding of core behavioral practices, Stephen helps people develop their lives to be the best that they can be, while simultaneously guiding them to helping them give up many of the vices that so often plague our members of society, teaching a purpose over pleasure lifestyle that brings true fulfillment instead of fleeting momentary pleasure. Welcome to the show, Stephen. How are things, brother?
Fantastic, thank you. And I don't think you could have encapsulated that better. I appreciate the introduction. And yeah, that is really what it's all about is, finding what it is in your life that you need to own and just leveling up at every opportunity possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And that can be a challenge for many of us. And so, as you know, we start off with, for all my guests here at the Revolutionary Man, I always want to talk about your journey, your hero's quest. And so tell us about that time when you faced, that maybe it was a crisis in faith or a challenge that you faced. How did that shape you? How did that experience shape you into the man you are today and the work that you're doing?
Yeah, of course. So I'd say that my biggest struggles in life really showed up through anger, drug use, and alcohol use. But they came from a place inside me where I had to recognize that it was, a negative mindset, that victimhood mentality, and all around limiting beliefs that I had adopted during my upbringing that basically left me stuck thinking that I wasn't worth anymore. And by acknowledging these things, it then became my responsibility to find out what it was in my life that I needed to change and take accountability for all of the influences and basically the role that I'd had in it, so that I could figure out where it was I needed to level up and how I could do that to develop myself to be the man that I could look in the mirror and fully admire.
And I love that. That is a tough thing for us to do, right? When we look in that mirror and we look and we truly face the challenge that we may not always agree. And you talked about limiting beliefs, and I think, in the work that we do here with the Awakened Man, especially in our group program, is we really challenge each other to look at those opportunities where we are shortchanging ourselves. We have this limiting belief, and sometimes that comes from a set of values at one point in our life maybe served us, but no longer. So tell me a little bit about that situation for yourself. Were there things that you were holding to be true for you, and then we would call those values, that were actually holding you back from really living the life that you wished?
Ultimately, I think just from the exposure that I had being raised, I came to accept that a man was supposed to be a certain thing, that in hindsight, I feel that perspective was very flawed. I was raised to think that a man was aggressive, drank, did drugs, sold drugs, basically came with an image of strength that was only represented by a physical ability, almost a gangster type perspective, rather than an all-around solidly developed, emotionally, mentally, and physically balanced male that I now perceive is what we really need to be. And so through that, it left me stuck thinking that what I saw around me was really what was deserved for the average male to have. And when I sort of saw past that and recognized what a male could actually be, I saw that once we can develop ourselves to be that pinnacle male figure, we can be so much more to society, to our families, and even just to ourselves as a whole.
Absolutely. When we come in, and then, when I talked about you're really living a life that's really full and complete. And what I mean by that is that it looks like that you really have embraced the idea of the whole man concept, as you were just describing. I think that's really crucial for today, because there's so much depression and anxiety right now, and it's challenging for it, as I was talking about with our Hero's Quest, the piece that we do here. So tell me a little bit about why you think that there's so much struggle with anxiety and depression.
So I think often when we're looking at anxiety and depression, people are trying to control their past and future, opposed to really trying to focus on their present. And I think even in the present moment, I dropped a bar of soap today. And as it was falling, I instinctively reached out to grab it. And it fell. And I recognized in the moment that I put no effort into grabbing it. I just went through the motions of it. And as I reflected on this, I recognized that most people that I talk to, whether it was in dog training, in coaching, or in just everyday life, they can parrot what it is that needs to be said that they're doing to make it appear as though they're doing what they need to be doing in their life. But if they are really honest with themselves, or if somebody is to watch it from an outside perspective, so often people are just going through the motion, but there's no effort, there's no intention, there's no passion. They're doing what they feel they need to do, but they're not doing what they have to do. And so through this, I feel, they end up just falling into a trap of feeling bad for themselves, going back to that victim mentality, opposed to really leveling up, recognizing what it is that they have to do and what it is they have to change to get the result that they actually want.
I completely agree with that. I think that's so true. And that's why we talk a lot also about really taking all responsibility for who you are, for where you are, and for whom you aspire to become. Because when we look at that is looking at future and present, but it's grounded in the present. And so I like how you frame that, because it makes complete sense. It really resonates with the work we're doing here. And I'm really grateful that, that you brought that forward. Now, I did talk a little bit about in your bio there about being, turning potentially killer dogs into loyal family members. So how are you applying those principles of behavior modification to helping individuals overcome their personal challenges and developing a disciplined mindset?
I think the biggest thing is that when a dog recognizes that their main advantage to life comes from following the path that brings the biggest reward, that true healthy balanced path, once they acknowledge that and they start behaving in the manner that we ideally want them to, they start getting all of the praise and the love and the freedoms that they actually desire. They get that balanced structure. It's the same thing with people. So often we think that we want one thing, but when we start really applying ourselves in the path that is most fulfilling and rewarding, and we do the right things in life instead of the things we think we want to do. And this could be diet, exercise, just overall lifestyle and the way that we interact with people and behave as a whole. We start to really recognize the true value that comes back to us instead of the momentary beneficial experiences that we're applying so much value to in the present.
It's so true, right? Because really what you're talking about there is really about having, a deeper purpose and meaning for doing things, right? And when you talk about having that healthy balance, it's interesting because I knew I wouldn't have made that connection, which is why I was curious to see how that behavior modification. But you're absolutely right. It sounds very stoic to me in terms of how you're looking at life, right? Like life's going to throw us, as we talked about earlier, like life's always going to throw us a curveball. We're going to be in a position where we're not going to be thrilled with the cards that are being dealt, but how we react to that and finding that deeper meaning, I think, is really the key to it. And so let me ask you then, is that why you feel that pain is our friend?
100%. I mean, the phrase that I like most is that every negative in your life provides you with the equivalent opportunity for growth. And so we develop and grow through the pain periods. You don't have all of the growth come from the beautiful moments in life. Now, these do help. They give us the desire to continue pushing forward through the rough times, but all of the real growth and opportunity for it come through our struggles. And so when you learn to embrace that and even recognize it as it's coming, that this is going to be an opportunity for my further growth, and you truly embrace that concept as a whole, you almost look forward to these things, and you know that you're going to make it through. And not only are you going to make it through, you're going to come out the other side better than you were when you went in.
I really like that last point that you made there about that future pacing, the idea of coming, because I think of what came to my mind was sometimes when I have to have a challenging conversation with somebody, it hasn't occurred. I already have a feeling there, a sense that it could be challenging. And so it gives me opportunities to prepare, to set the stage in order so I can show up to the best that I can and have the outcome, most desired outcome, not just for me, but especially for the both of us. And so thanks for pointing that out, that really it's also about looking at future, what's happening. Because to your point, we can sense or know when things might be more challenging based on scenarios that have been going around that. So that's a really, really good point. And I'm glad you brought that forward. How do you guide your clients?
Definitely.
Go ahead.
Often we do project from our past experience to the future one that may occur. And I do think a lot of times we may end up building up too much value in what may happen, and it ends up spiraling the potential conversation into a direction that may not have even had to have gone. And that is one thing I feel that we do often bring an energy to something that, if it hadn't been present, could have brought a different outcome in the first place. So although there is advantage of bringing the past forward in order to learn from it, too often we end up dredging it forward and reliving it because we really put too much value in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with that. And I think what the key part there, you can use the word energy. And I think that's another really great nuance to what we're talking about here, because you could future play that with negative energy. And you talked about that negative energy really is an opportunity for us to have the opportunity to grow. And so having the right energy put into place for that it will make that outcome much more desirable. So it's a really nice nuance, and thanks for bringing that forward, because those are the types of things that, to your point, there are times that we'll dredge forward the past, and all what we're doing is reinforcing the negative habit, behavior, or whatever it is it's really been holding us back. And so I know you're do a lot of work also with fitness and health and that. So tell me a little bit about how that's working with your coaching clients, and how have you been using that to help them break through some of their limiting beliefs?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the coaching that I do is so focused on mindset, but the lifestyle is equally as important. So in order for it to all function at its maximum capacity, we need to develop the mindset to be 100% bulletproof. And we need the fitness component to have you in the physical shape and getting your energies once again lifted to be where they need to be for you to be your best person every day. And then the nutrition component is just as important, because if you're not eating what you're supposed to be eating, you're going to see it physically and you're going to feel it in your mentality as well. So by getting all three of these in unison and working together, we can really develop a core foundation that the person can function at their ideal capacity every day. And from there, we can project that into absolutely everything in their life, where they're ready and prepared physically, mentally, and emotionally to conquer and really do their maximum ability in everything that they have to embrace in their day.
Yeah, I like that. It's really a synergistic approach, right? And it's so true, because we can't just focus on health, fitness. We can't just focus on the nutrition aspect of it. Those are key pieces of it. But if we don't have the right mindset, that's really the glue that holds it together. And that's where I think it's important that we have coaches such as yourself. The work that we're doing here at the Awakened Man is to help our clients move through that piece, to get through. And we also talk a lot about the self-sabotage, right? It's the self-sabotaging behaviors that they don't necessarily recognize that's occurring for them. It'll be the guy that, wants to be the business owner. And then just before it's time to launch, he blows it up some way. And so do you have in your work, are you finding that experience as well, that there tends to be this where we tend to self-sabotage, and is there any commonality that you're finding?
Yeah, I mean, you see that throughout life. I mean, you see the businessman that's preparing for something huge, and then all of a sudden they're halfway through a bottle of rum and, late for their flight, and it's just sabotages the whole thing. You got people that are preparing for something physical, and all of a sudden, they're crushing a pizza and donuts the night before. And these go back to those limiting self-beliefs. We often believe that we are worth less than we actually are. And so I think, number one, seeing people succeed in places that you want to be, knowing that they are not a super person, but rather that we all are. And then being told that you are worth it. You can do this. You deserve this. And I think that's where often having a coach is very important, because they can see the potential in you that you may not see yourself. They can hold you to the accountability that you may be lacking at times, and they can support you when you need it to be uplifted, and they can also correct you and basically add that compression factor when you're getting a little bit too boisterous. And so this ties right back into the dog training too, except with the dogs, it was correction and praise. And with the humans, it's compassion and compression. But it's the same process of knowing when to apply which to get the maximum and most ideal result for your client.
Oh, that's really interesting. I like that analogy for sure. You also talked a little bit about, and I was doing some research and getting ready, you've mentioned something about ADD as being a scapegoat for some of us. Now, is that something that you had to overcome, or is that something that you're just finding with your clients and in society in general?
So, I mean, I have very good friends that I've, grown up with. My partner has, basically self-diagnosed herself as having ADHD. And myself, I 100% have this too. I'm not sure that anybody in our society who's raised with the media that we have doesn't have to deal with this to some degree or another. But as soon as you attribute that you have a deficit in any area of your life, whether it's ADHD or any other, cause of you not being your absolute best, to me, that's just giving you a note as to where you need to level up. Where do you need to put your focus? And then the question is, if you have something like ADD, what have you done to eliminate it? This is where I read every day. I meditate daily. I exercise daily. So I am burning out my energies. I'm focusing for extended period of times. I'm developing my mental capability to keep me on track with things that I otherwise might not want to stay on track with. And if I just use the excuse of, oh, I have ADD, I could easily just walk away from whatever it is that I'm doing, but that doesn't do me justice. And it could be very rude in the situation, depending on, who you're talking to.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I know I have friends and family members that struggle with that as well. And you're absolutely right. It is about it's that signpost that says, okay, now you've been able to name it. So I interviewed one gentleman. He talked about, he said, name it to tame it, and then feel it to reveal it, right? And so you start to do that process, just as you described, right? So you understand it now, and you can take purposeful action towards working with it, as opposed to having it work against you. Yeah. You're actually working with it. And I think that was really, really awesome to do that. Your journey also talks about being the best that you can be. And how did you personally continue to grow and evolve? And what practices or habits are you prioritizing in your own life to maintain that mindset of continuous improvement?
So I was blessed to come across a coach that I signed up with, and he helped me to establish certain ground rules. And once again, like in my dog training practice, I worked with him for an extended period of time to basically download his voice into my head. And then once I worked with it for long enough, it evolved back into my own. And so through these routines, I've been able to establish ground rules as how to build enough wins every day to raise my internal value and ensure that I can continuously conquer any failures that I come into and continue to push forward to stack more and more wins on a daily basis. And so this comes down to, I have a set wake up time of 5 a.m. that I'm up at every day. And this is 365 days a year, regardless of how I feel, regardless of what time I go to bed. I wake up, I have a structured morning that I do, which includes fitness, eating properly, reading, journaling, and basically structuring my day so that by the time everybody else's day is starting, I've already elevated myself in every manner so that I am that best person that I need to be, so I can offer it to all.
Love that. Love that. I just made a couple notes there. The ground rules for building your daily wins. And I think that is so key and you talked earlier about being in the present. And that's a great tidbit there that hopefully our listeners picked up about setting yourself up with some ground rules that allows you to have those wins, so that at the end of the day, if you do have a journaling practice, whether that's physically journaling, writing, or you take that time for reflection, what a great way to keep yourself motivated and keep moving the needle forward. Because I think at times we get this idea that, we've arrived, I lost the 20 pounds that I wanted to lose. And then we tend to go back to bad habits, especially if we haven't worked with a coach who's been able to keep us on track. And so I really like that. And I like how you also talked about setting a structured morning routine, because I think that too is so key to our success in life. How we start our day really determines how that day is going to go. And so thanks for two awesome tidbits there.
Yeah, and so on that note, number one, starting your day in a way that you're structuring it ensures that I'm not waking up and leaving my day subject to how I woke up. Today I'm in a bad mood. Today's going to be terrible. And this is how I sort of left my life for much of my life. And then secondly, that point that you just brought up, I think, is huge. Too often we are focused on an end goal. And once that goal is achieved, or if we fail, worst case, what happens after that? We typically go back to the previous negative, unwanted behaviors. Whereas when you fall in love with the practice and you put all of the value in the one step that you have to do next, there is no ultimate goal. We're not winning some, award. We're just constantly stacking wins in our life. And I think that is one of the biggest mental shifts that people need to make.
That's a great way to frame that, right? It's really about the goal is about becoming, not a complete end state, because a becoming is always evolving. It's always changing and growing, right? I don't have the same values and beliefs that I had in my 20s or in my 30s, and I'm in my 50s now. It's changes. Why does it change? Because we have experiences and life lessons learned. And we've had coaches along the way, we've had mentors, and all of that impacts who we are. And that's a great nuance to add as well to our conversation. So listen, when the chips are down, what advice would you give someone to really help them pull through a challenging time that they may be having?
I mean, the bottom line is that know that the good times will always come back if you push forward. Find the gratitude for everything that you do have in your life, and find the gratitude for all of the challenges that are coming your way, like we already touched on. reach out to people that are on the path that you want to be on. Find the people that are highly successful at whatever it is that you want to be successful at. Don't necessarily put all your energy into sharing things with the people around you that might be inherently negative. Because when an idea is fresh, or when you're struggling with something, you are in a vulnerable state that if you get the wrong feedback from the wrong person, it is going to be catastrophic. So being select with your energy as a whole and making sure that you're constantly striving to perpetually push yourself forward is key.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I like that piece. It's really about being careful about who we're surrounding ourselves, who we share our goals and our dreams and our aspirations with. And when we treat them with the respect that they deserve, and finding that mentor, that person that's a little bit further down the line than we are, to help guide us, really gives us that energy to keep moving forward, as opposed to maybe telling a family member or a friend what it is that you're trying to do, and they may just not understand it. And out of kindness from themselves, it may come across much worse than what we had hoped to get from them. And so that's a great piece of advice. So speaking of advice, along your journey, you must have had a mentor or two that has probably given you a piece of advice that's really served you more than anything else. Can you tell us what that advice was and how it served you?
Purpose over pleasure. That phrase right there, if you really break it down, is everything. And if you highly focus on living a life based on purpose over pleasure, it will straighten every decision that you're contemplating making.
Standing, I love that. Stephen, of everything we spoke about today, and maybe there was something we didn't get a chance to touch on, what would be the one thing you'd like our listeners to take away from our conversation?
I mean, just know that you're worth it. Nobody out there is ever in a position that they're in because they are magical in any way other than the way that you are. So it's about just embracing your strengths and growing through your weaknesses, and you can be where you want to be. The day you decide that you're worth more and you want it is the day that your life can change. You then just have to stay on the path to get the actual result.
Oh, I love that. That's outstanding. Once again, Stephen, thank you so much for spending time with us today. And, you were able to give us some breadcrumbs and a path here to help us really own our stuff, own our shit, and then take responsibility for the consequences, no matter how challenging they may be. And so if men are interested in getting a hold of you, participating in your work, what would be the best way for them to do that?
So Instagram is definitely the easiest way to reach me. I answer all my messages directly. My Brother's Keeper Coaching is my handle. If you're not on social media, I do also have a website. That's www.mybrotherskeepercoaching.com. And so either one of those options works very well. And yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Outstanding. Well, I want to make sure all that information's in the show notes for today's episode. Once again, thank you for being on the show. I loved our conversation today.
Likewise, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Revolutionary Man podcast. Are you ready to own your destiny? To become more the man you are destined to be? Join the brotherhood that is the Awakened Man at theawakenedman.net and start forging a new destiny today.